Do you know that feeling when the power bill arrives? You open the envelope, or you check the email, and the number is always slightly higher than you expected. You turn off lights, you buy efficient appliances, you adjust the thermostat. But the meter on the side of your house never stops spinning. Most people accept this as a basic fact of existence. They believe electricity is difficult to make, expensive to transport, and impossible to get for free. That is just how the world works. That sentence has kept an entire civilization paying for something that might actually be surrounding them right now. But there is another reality, a hidden reality, a truth buried under over a century of copper wires, wooden poles, and corporate monopolies. Because the most expensive part of your energy bill is not the power itself. It is the delivery system. And once you understand how that system was actually designed, you start realizing something disturbing. We are not paying for energy, we are paying for the meter, forbidden vault. There is a strange rumor that has circulated among electrical engineers and amateur inventors for decades. A whisper about a device so simple it could be built for less than the cost of a decent meal. The $10 receiver. Not a generator, not a solar panel, a receiver. A small configuration of coils, a ground wire, and an antenna. That supposedly pulls ambient electrical energy directly from the environment. When most people hear about this, they laugh. They call it a scam, a perpetual motion myth, internet garbage. Because we have been taught that energy must be burned, boiled, or spun through massive turbines to exist. But the device itself is not the real secret. The real secret is the environment it operates in, and modern society is completely blind to the electrical ocean we are swimming in every single day. Most people think the sky above them is just empty air, clouds, wind, maybe some radio waves passing through, but during a thunderstorm, that empty air suddenly produces 1 billion volts of raw electricity, crashing into the ground with terrifying force. Where did that energy come from? It did not magically appear. It was already there. The Earth itself is a giant battery. And here is the important part most people miss. The surface of the Earth holds a negative charge. The upper atmosphere, specifically the ionosphere, holds a massive positive charge. Between them is the insulating layer of the air we breathe. We are literally living inside the gap of a planetary-sized capacitor. And this is where the story gets incredibly strange. Because over 100 years ago, a man named Nikola Tesla figured this out. He did not just theorize it, he built equipment to harness it. He understood that if you could create a conductive path to that upper layer, the sky itself could become an invisible power line, and the Earth would be the return conductor. You would not need billions of miles of copper wire. You would not need coal plants every 50 miles, you would just need a transmitter to pump energy into the system, and a receiver to pull it out, anywhere on the planet. This is why Tesla packed his bags and traveled to Colorado Springs in 1899. He chose the location for its high elevation of over 6,000 feet and its violent, frequent lightning storms. He believed these conditions were perfect for his experiments. He built a massive laboratory with a giant coil, and he began pushing millions of volts into the ground, watching the electrical resonance travel through the Earth. He wasn't trying to send power through the air like a radio wave. That is the biggest misunderstanding. He was trying to ring the Earth like a bell. If you strike a bell, the vibration travels through the entire metal structure. Tesla believed electrical energy could do the same thing through the Earth and its atmosphere. And if the whole planet is vibrating with electrical energy, you can place a receiver anywhere to catch that vibration and turn it back into usable power. Now here's the twist most people never hear. Tesla proved to himself that it worked. He secured funding to build a massive prototype station on Long Island, New York. He called it Wardenclyffe. A 18-7-foot wooden tower topped with a massive 68-foot metal dome. Underneath it, a strange and massive root system of iron rods and copper plates dug deep into the Earth. In fact, modern ground-penetrating radar recently confirmed the existence of complex tunnels 60 to 70 feet underground, with Earth grippers fanning out like spokes on a wheel. The purpose was to connect the tower intimately with the Earth's electrical vibration. It was supposed to be the first hub of a world wireless system, a system capable of sending messages, news, and electrical power anywhere on the globe. And this is where the internet becomes confusing. Because if you search for Wardenclyffe today, you will find a tragic story of failure. History books say he simply ran out of money. They say his main investor, the incredibly powerful J.P. Morgan, refused to give him more funds after a stock market panic in 1901. They say Morgan grew skeptical of the commercial viability of wireless power. And eventually, the tower was sold for scrap in 1917 to satisfy debts. But there is another reason whispered among historians and engineers. A hidden reason. If you can pull electricity out of the ground with a simple antenna and a ground wire, where do you put the meter? How do you charge a customer for something that is everywhere? You can't. And if you can't meter it, you can't monetize it. The men who were building the modern world were heavily invested in copper mines, lumber for poles, and the massive infrastructure of the wired grid. A wireless world meant the destruction of their empires. So the project was starved of capital. The tower was torn down, and the world was wired up. Every house tethered, every building metered, every human being forced into a lifelong subscription just to keep the lights on. Again, fix the system to control the people, not to free them. And this explains something strange about our modern electrical grid. It is incredibly fragile. Trees fall and entire neighborhoods go dark. Transformers blow and cities shut down. We lose a massive percentage of our generated power simply pushing it through miles of resistive wire. It is an inefficient, vulnerable, and expensive way to move energy. But it is the perfect way to measure it. Now let us talk about the device, the $10 receiver, because this is where people waste enormous amounts of time searching for a magic gadget. You have probably seen the videos online, people wrapping copper wire around magnets, burying zinc and copper plates in the dirt, lighting up small LEDs and claiming they have defeated the power company. Most of these are parlor tricks, or they are simply catching stray radio frequency energy from a nearby broadcasting station. But underneath the noise, there is actual physics at work. A true radiant energy receiver does not create power out of nothing. It acts as a siphon. It taps into the voltage differential between the high ground and the low ground. The Earth is constantly buzzing with natural telluric currents, and the atmosphere is constantly charged by solar radiation and thunderstorms. Tesla famously patented a device to capture radiant energy, an insulated metal plate elevated in the air, connected to a capacitor, and then grounded. When the sun hit the plate, or ambient static accumulated, the capacitor would fill up with charge. When it was full, it would discharge, creating a sudden burst of usable current. It was simple, elegant, and it worked on the exact same principles as his giant tower, just on a microscopic scale. But again, this only works if you understand the invisible system. If you place a tiny receiver in your backyard, you might get enough power to tick a clock, because the system around the device matters more than the device itself. Tesla's ultimate plan was to use Wardenclyffe to pump the Earth full of excess energy, to turn the entire planet into an overflowing reservoir of power. If he had succeeded, that simple $10 receiver in your backyard wouldn't just be catching a trickle of static. It would be drinking from a roaring, invisible river of electricity. Your house could pull the energy it needed directly from the dirt under the foundation and the air above the roof. No wires, no bills. And this is why the established industries hated it. Not because it was bad engineering, but because it was bad business. Now here is something almost nobody talks about. The technology never actually disappeared. It was just rebranded. Today, we use wireless power transmission constantly. Your phone charges wirelessly on a pad using inductive coupling. RFID chips power up from the scanner's electromagnetic field. Even companies are now experimenting with beaming power to drones and satellites using microwaves and lasers. In fact, companies today are working on technology to transmit power wirelessly to entire homes. They are achieving up to 95% efficiency in some of their tests. The principles of resonance, induction, and wireless transfer are accepted science, but they are always kept small, kept contained, kept within the boundaries of a product you must buy, tethered to a grid you must pay for. The infrastructure remains untouchable, because infrastructure is power, and if you control the infrastructure, you control the society. Now think about how strange this entire situation really is. Millions of people spend massive chunks of their income paying for electricity, while living inside a planetary generator that produces billions of volts naturally. That is like dying of thirst while sailing on a freshwater lake. You just need the right cup to drink from. But society has been trained to think in products, not in natural systems. Buy the solar panel, buy the battery wall, buy the smart meter. Make your house a little more efficient so the bill hurts a little less. Treat the symptom, ignore the cause. Temporary relief becomes a recurring subscription. We are told this is progress. But true progress would have been understanding the environment we live in and harmonizing with it. Instead, we built a fragile net of wires over the entire world and chained ourselves to it. And once those chains are worn long enough, they become invisible. People adapt to a system that never had to be the only option. They forget that 100 years ago, a genius looked at the sky and saw a power line. He looked at the ground and saw a return conductor. And he almost gave the world the key to the vault. So no, the $10 wireless power device is not magic. It does not violate the laws of physics. It is simply a mechanical reminder of a path we were not allowed to take. Because the real problem was never about generating electricity. It was about who gets to control it. And when you stop treating energy as a product to be sold and start seeing it as an inherent property of the Earth itself, everything underneath modern life starts looking very different, including the spinning meter on the side of your house. Because sometimes the real problem is not what you see. It is the invisible system quietly shaping your life the entire time.